Today on Pepp Talk, we're going to be discussing an event in which an SUV ran over 60 plus people in a Christmas parade in Wisconsin. We're going to be discussing the new Omicron variant of COVID-19. We're also going to be discussing the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict and much more. Hello everybody and welcome back to Pepp Talk. So, it's been a while, I know that, and I apologize. 2 weeks ago I had all these papers and assignments basically coming in at once, and I've never experienced that workload in my life. And I just could not find the time to make Pepp Talk, even though I really wanted to with the Rittenhouse thing coming out and everything, but I honestly just did not have time, and enough other people covered it, so I let it be. And then it was obviously Thanksgiving last week, so I also didn't do anything last week. But now I'm back, and tonight I have quite a couple of things that I want to discuss briefly. So the first thing I want to talk about is this event in which an SUV ran over 60 plus people in Wisconsin at this Christmas parade, or at least that's what the mainstream type news outlets have been saying. And I kind of want to delve into that just a little bit. So just to give us an idea of what actually happened, a driver apparently plowed through a Christmas parade in Wisconsin, injuring over 60 civilians, and 9 of them were children, and he killed 6 of them, and a couple of those were children as well. Now, what's really odd about this is not only is it horrible and very tragic this event transpired at all, but major news sources are oddly titling their articles using the word, quote, SUV instead of the name of the murderer, in this case, which is Darrell Brooks. And we're going to have some images here to show you. So CNN titles their article, "Since a Car Drove Through a City Christmas Parade, Killing 6 People and Injuring Scores of Others." Then we have over here the Washington Post saying, quote, "After an SUV slammed into a Wisconsin parade and killed 5, driver to be charged with homicide," end quote. So as you can see from CNN and Washington Post, two of the biggest, largest news networks out there, they are saying a car drove through it. An SUV slammed into the Wisconsin parade. They're not saying the name Darrell Brooks. And I just had to question why, because it's a little odd that everyone would be using the word SUV or car rather than something like Darrell Brooks or any other using the name of the murderer rather than the type of vehicle and the type of weapon that he used. It's a little odd. You don't really see that too often. And I really wanted to talk about this because Darrell Brooks is a convicted criminal, for one, who is a repeat offender who should not have been let out of jail. He was a repeat offender of violent crimes, who is a Black Lives Matter supporter, which is interesting because he posted on Facebook that day of the crime promoting violence against whites, which is fairly interesting. And I just wanted to ask, what would happen if this were to be, I don't know, someone who were white, to be instance, you know? I feel like these article titles might be a little different. Maybe instead of a car drove through a city, maybe it was a white supremacist drove through a city Christmas parade, killing 6 people. Maybe it would be after a white supremacist slammed into a Wisconsin parade and killed 5. Not an SUV or car. I don't know, that's just my assumption, but I find it a little odd that they are using titles like the car or the SUV and refusing to acknowledge the fact that it was Darrell Brooks that did it. And I happen to think it's because it doesn't exactly fit their narrative. But that could be me wearing a tinfoil hat, but that's just my thought, you know? And I just don't think it's too crazy to think that either. And the reason I say that is because some of these news outlets actually attempted to say at first that Darrell Brooks didn't even try to kill these people. He was simply fleeing from the cops from a previous crime. It just randomly happened to run over 60 plus people, killing 6 of them, many of which were children, by the way. So why would they try to do this? It really just perplexes me. Why would these news outlets try and hide the fact that this guy killed these people? Why would they say, well, you know, he wasn't actually trying to kill them. He was just fleeing from a previous crime. It's very interesting to me. And on top of that, like I said earlier, why would they not say the name Darrell Brooks in their titles? Why would it be an SUV? Why is it a car? A car didn't do this. The man Darrell Brooks did it. So it's very interesting that they would use those titles, and the fact that they tried to avert the fact that he intentionally killed these people by saying that he was fleeing from a previous crime. It's very, very odd and just very foggy, and just you could see there's something going on here that just isn't right. And I should also mention on top of this that Brooks was released on bail just before the massacre took place after he allegedly ran over another woman at a gas station in the same car. So it's not like this guy just randomly decided to do this, right? He is a repeat violent offender. And for some reason, the news outlets, the mainstream news outlets, decided to abstain from using the word Daryl Brooks, or even man in this case, but rather SUV. The car did it. The SUV ran through the parade, not Daryl Brooks. And I happen to think maybe it's because he's not white. Maybe it's because he's a BLM supporter and they don't want to include something that doesn't really fit their narrative of white supremacy being a major threat in America. But that's just my take on that. Regardless of that, the entire event is tragic in itself, and thoughts and prayers go out to all of the victims. And for those of you who don't really like the thoughts and prayers thing, well, too bad. I'm going to pray anyway. With that being said, I'd like to go ahead and move on to our next story, which is about the Omicron variant. So it's a little interesting. We got another variant here going on with the COVID variant, and it's originating from Africa, and it's called the Omicron variant, which everyone is absolutely freaking out about. And there's a couple of things to note about this variant. So one, thankfully the Hill reports that President Biden is not going to lock down the country, but this isn't to say that people aren't going absolutely nuts over this variant, with the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, ordering a halt on all elective surgeries amid this Omicron variant emerging. So it's good that we're not locking down, yes, but that, like I said, that's not stopping people from freaking out. And you have to wonder, okay, well, why are people freaking out? It's a new variant. How dangerous is it? How viable is it to killing us? Let's figure that out. So if you look into it, the person who actually discovered the variant, the scientist who discovered the presence of the Omicron variant originating from Africa, actually said that there's no reason to freak out for this. In fact, here's a quote of her saying, quote, "The mildness of the symptoms that we are seeing apparently, there's no reason for panicking, as we don't see severely ill patients," end quote.
But looking at the mildness of the symptoms that we are seeing, currently there's no reason for panicking, as we don't see severely ill patients.
That is a scientist saying this. The scientist who discovered the variant in the first place is saying that the mildness of the symptoms that it is creating warrants no threat to us and warrants no need to be flustered or worried about this new Omicron variant spreading. So why are there people like Kathy Hochul ordering a halt on all elective surgeries in New York? Why is this? Why are people freaking out? Well, I hate to say this. I feel like I'm on a broken record. I feel like I've said that before, but it literally is, I simply think, a way for politicians and people in the government, state leaders, to find out new ways to justify their reasoning to extend their control over the citizens' lives. The only way that they can retain power or even gain more power is to keep the people scared and making them think that they need the government to step in and help and do something because it's an emergency. And I feel like that's exactly why people are freaking out over this new Omicron variant. It's because they want us to. And it's a little odd given the fact that there's no reason to. If you actually look at it scientifically speaking, the scientist who discovered the variant, as far as we know, said that there is no reason to be afraid of this new variant. Knowing that, no one should be afraid. Literally no one, but we are. And people at the federal level and state level are pushing the fact that we should be scared and we should mask up and all of these different things. And I simply think it's not dealing with health problems anymore. I simply don't. I don't think these public officials are worried about our public safety anymore. I think they're using that as more of a veil in order for them to pursue radical policies or extend their control over civilian lives, because that's the only way that they can do that, justifiably speaking. But that's just my take. I've said that so many times, I don't want to go on because you know my point. But yeah, we have this new Omicron variant now, and you should not be worried about it, to be honest. You really shouldn't. You should get vaccinated if you haven't been, but other than that, you shouldn't be worried about it. But moving on from that, I want to talk about something else that's a little interesting. Something else that's been covered quite a lot, which is the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. So I don't want to go into too much depth about this just because I don't want to make this episode too long. And a lot of people all over the place have been reporting on this and go into far more detail than I'm going to tonight. So if you want to go look for the actual, real details of the entire case and all the witness testimonies, you can find that online somewhere. But tonight, I just kind of want to tell you exactly why the verdict of not guilty was administered to Kyle Rittenhouse, because a lot of people are a little confused about why this happened and, what actually happened. So, as I said, Kyle Rittenhouse was declared not guilty. And there are a couple of reasons this happened. One, there was a gun charge put forth against Kyle Rittenhouse saying that the rifle he was carrying around was an illegal gun. He should not be able to carry it, and because of that, he should have been charged with illegal carrying of the gun. And with that, it actually is important to note that the gun charge was dismissed entirely. Now you might be thinking, well, why? Isn't it illegal for this 17-year-old to be carrying this semi-automatic rifle around? Well, no, it's actually not. The reason it was not illegal for him to carry it is because the laws were not at all prohibiting the 17-year-old from carrying the rifle. What the law said in Wisconsin, Kenosha, was saying that only if the barrel was shortened, then it would be an illegal weapon to carry. And that was not the case with Kyle Rittenhouse. He did not shorten the barrel of his gun. So the whole point of the law in Wisconsin and Kenosha is to stop kids from keeping sawed-off shotguns or shortened barreled guns hidden under like their garments, their jackets, or their shirts. That's the whole point of the law. So because Kyle Rittenhouse did not actually saw off the barrel, he didn't shorten it anyway, he didn't alter it, it's just a normal semi-automatic rifle, he was perfectly legal to carry that weapon. And that's just the reason, that's simply the facts. That's the reason that entire case, charge was dismissed, because there was no standing for it. There was no foundation for that charge, given the fact that he was simply not holding an illegal weapon at that point. So that charge was dismissed on its own. Then he was not convicted of murder because of several things. One is that one of the prosecutor's main witnesses literally testified saying that he was not shot at until he pulled out his handgun and aimed it at Kyle Rittenhouse's head.
When you were standing 3 to 5 feet from him with your arms up in the air, he never fired, right?
Correct.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
So given that, it kind of destroyed the prosecution's case regarding it being a murder, because Kyle Rittenhouse did not shoot the man until the guy pulled out his handgun and aimed it at Kyle Rittenhouse's face. So that makes it a clear and shut, almost self-defense case right in there. But even further than that, Rittenhouse comes out and says that he was pepper sprayed beforehand at, I want to say like a gas station or somewhere in the area. And even then he did not fire back because he wasn't getting attacked with lethal force. It was a non-lethal force, right? It's pepper spray. That's not going to kill you. So he has no right to shoot back at the person pepper spraying him. It was only after the fact that a person literally drew his handgun, aimed it at his head, and after someone else hit Kyle in the head with the skateboard that he shot his weapon, that he fired his weapon. And that's the reason that he was not declared a murderer. Also, a lot of people are saying that he's a white supremacist and that he's killed all these black people, when in reality, no black person was injured. The only people that were killed were white people in this instance. Not that that matters in my opinion, but it is a note of clarification that I think needs to be said. But yeah, this guy was not guilty because he wasn't carrying an illegal gun. So that charge was dismissed entirely. And he didn't fire on anyone unless they were going to fire on him, which I just showed you. So there's no reason this man should have been declared guilty in the first place. It literally just doesn't make factual sense when you look at the case and all of the logistics behind it and what actually happened. And you can go online if you want and look at all the videos and see what actually happened for your own eyes. But what happened was that he went there, and he wasn't there to go shoot up people. I know a lot of people are saying that how could the 17-year-old white guy go to this random town and go shoot up all these people and not be declared guilty? Well, he wasn't there to shoot up all these people. What he was there for was to defend various small businesses from being destroyed from these rioters, so that these people who own these businesses, who don't have insurance, can maintain their lives, maintain their livelihoods. People who would have lost their businesses, everything would have been lost. They would have lost everything they had. They wouldn't have been able to support themselves. They wouldn't have been able to support their families. And he was simply there to make sure that these businesses were not being burned down and destroyed by these crazy rioting people who were throwing Molotov cocktails and blowing up cars and doing all these crazy things in the name of social justice. So that was his take. He was not there to go shoot up people, and anyone saying that just simply isn't talking the truth. So it's interesting that what's been going on with this case and this verdict has stirred up so much controversy, because it's not really anything hard to understand. It's pretty easy, actually, given the fact that if you look at the facts of the case, that it was a pretty open and shut self-defense case. But regardless, I'd like to go ahead and move on to this next subject before we run out of time, and that is Biden's travel ban. So President Biden has enacted a travel ban, and what's really interesting is that he has enacted one, even though just a year ago he said that when Trump did it, he was being a racist. And I'm actually going to put up the tweet here. Joe Biden tweeted, quote, "A wall will not stop the coronavirus. Banning all travel from Europe or any other part of the world will not stop it. The disease could impact every nation and any person on the planet, and we need a plan to combat it," end quote. So he's obviously saying that Trump shouldn't be doing this travel ban that he did during his presidency, and he goes on to say it's racist and all these other things. And it's interesting because now, according to Politico, quote, "The Biden administration has announced plans on Friday to ban travel to the United States from South Africa and seven other countries just hours after the new coronavirus variant was deemed a highly transmissible virus of concern. The travel restrictions will begin Monday, affecting South Africa and Zimbabwe, Namibia, Lesotho, and all these other countries. And the administration's decision was in response to advice from Anthony Fauci, the president's chief medical advisor in the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The official said roughly a dozen countries took similar action on Friday," end quote. So, he is restricting travel from South Africa and all these other countries. And apparently it's not racist anymore. It's completely okay. And that kind of 180 is a little interesting, that it was racist under Trump, but it's not under him. Anyway, I just thought I'd point that out because it's a little hypocritical of him and by everyone on his kind of side of the aisle. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. I know that was a lot of information. I wanted to get through it pretty quickly, and I kind of didn't get to go into as much detail as I wanted to on every subject, but I kind of just wanted this episode to be a kind of a catch-up type episode, and I hope I could get everyone caught up on what's going on in the world right now amidst, finals and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week on Pepp Talk. Bye-bye, everybody.